Hi everyone, welcome. Do you recognize the shape that the worm chow is in? It's the logo of my channel. And well, after we left it that way, even though it was 2 weeks ago that we started, I came back 7 days later to see how the worms were doing on consuming the chow, and they did a pretty good job. I even came back in at day 10, and they did even a better job, and that leads us to today, day 14. And today we're going to actually be dipping into the system and giving them some more food, since I think they're due for some more food. What you're seeing out here on the surface are just some leftovers of this type of paper that the toilet paper rolls are individually wrapped in. I was curious because it had this really smooth, very smooth feel to it. I had this weird feeling like maybe it was coated with something to give it that sense that it was very smooth and slippery, almost like waxy, but I think in the end I came to the realization that it's just paper. And the worms ate up every bit of it that had worm chow on it. But these few pieces remain, a little bit of leftover. And what I had in mind for them was a little variation on this. Kind of giving them more dry food because the system's pretty high up there in terms of its days of age. 192 days of age, to be exact. This is the bin that we had done the so-called lasagna-styled feedings in. We had always made great effort to keep nice stacked arrangements of the bedding and the food put in here. This is a tea bag. And I thought they were going to be doing a little bit better in here. I was getting the sense that they're being worked down, and they're obviously being worked down because it's certainly nothing, not even close to the way it looks when it was first put in here, but it's a slow-going thing, and it'd probably help a lot too if it was sunken down low. So I'm just collecting up this piece of coffee filter, these little pieces of toilet paper roll, wrapper paper. Figured maybe we just go through here, we'll give this whole thing a little bit of a till up and an aeration, see how the moisture levels coming along. We've had it pretty tightly covered with that piece of plastic covering, so not a whole lot of moisture would have escaped from here, I believe. And even last time we observed how it was pretty damp still, damp enough that if you clump it, it'll stick together, but it'll also break apart quite easily too. So I think the moisture is pretty good. This is like the pit from some sort of a small plum or something. Something that's not going to break down in the worm bin. I might as well remove it. But let's go ahead and aerate all this material in this bin. I'd really like to start seeing this stuff dry off a little bit because at some point soon I'm going to be wanting to move these little guys out of this material. I'll probably want to try to migrate them, and they'll usually not want to migrate out of material that's nice and damp and cozy. This is another tea bag. Just wondering what I could do to get those tea bags to finally break down. Every time I go through this stuff, I feel like I want to kind of loosen it up and break it up a little bit, get little pockets of air everywhere to see if that might help with the drying, but I got a feeling the only way to allow drying to occur is to really put the plastic covering back on in such a way that it's really loose so that it can ventilate, lose some of its moisture to evaporation. And besides moisture, there's also little bits of things in here, I'm not sure what this is, probably a chunk of bedding or something. It almost seems to me like when things get a little bit too damp, a large leftover chunk of bedding like this will suddenly start to have all kinds of pieces of castings attaching to it, and then this piece of cardboard or paper or whatever that is not going to get the attention that it needs so that the worms will break it down. So it does almost seem to me like letting this stuff get a little bit more crumbly and loose so that there's nothing like that in here, no encapsulated remaining bits of food or bedding. That would only be to the benefit of this system. The other thing I noticed too from watching the video from last time we checked in here was the presence of a good number of these leaf stems in here too. So there's still a little bit of work to be done in here for the worms. So I'm going to be trying to steer things towards drying. Still want to give them the food that they need to keep going. A little bit of bedding would be nice to give them too, amidst all these castings. And then hopefully in the meantime they'll also kind of continue breaking down all those little leaf stems that are scattered throughout the material too. This is kind of like what we did last time too. We just went through the whole system trying to loosen everything up, make sure nothing's compacted and everything's a little bit airy and fluffed up. And I guess that's probably one thing we'll do differently today is we'll probably put the plastic covering on in such a way that it starts to allow for a little bit of moisture loss around the edges of the container. And then, you know, the material out on the edges won't get quite as much attention from the worms if it gets a bit dry, and that's fine. And then at this point, you know, if some of this stuff starts to dry, it's already so far broken down that if it gets neglected a little bit by the worms, it's not a big deal. Okay. It's pretty interesting just to see how many worms there are pretty much everywhere. Every handful appears to have a whole bunch of worms in it. I just feel like I want to collect up all these little chunks of paper every time I bump into one. But it's okay. A little bit of food here and there, little scraps of stuff for them throughout the material is good. And man, there are just cocoons all over the place. This is just another one of those instances where I saw a cocoon just sort of resting within this little pocket of material. Not sure if you could see it. It's right there out on top. A little lemon or lime looking thing. It looks like a little citrus. I guess, you know, also because it's got those little tapered off ends, the way a citrus, maybe more like a lemon has. I think that's why I kind of see it as a lemon. Maybe not so much because of its color. That greenish color would maybe look more like a not yet ripe orange or something. I don't know. Yeah, this material is really nice. And these worms, you know, it would make good sense to start gearing them up for a new system, getting them into something fresh. Because while they can really probably do a great job working this material down further and further, it might be time better spent by them in just a whole new bin somewhere. Starting to break down a whole new batch of stuff, because what I'll end up doing anyway is keeping this material around for a while, and if there's cocoons in it, and as we saw there's a number of them. Here's another pit from a plum. Getting that out of here too. Then as soon as all those cocoons begin hatching, we're going to have a whole bunch of additional little mouths to feed, and they'll be able to do all the really fine cleanup of all the unbroken down bits of leftovers in this material, and then we'll end up with some really beautiful castings. I think we pretty much tilled up the majority of the bin. Maybe this corner here, not yet. That's the last section. Still needs to be tilled up. Yeah, there's a good number of worms in here. Definitely would be a nice thing to get these little guys rounded up and relocated into a new location. So I think for now, we're going to feed them very similar to the way they got fed last time. But my idea was to use this, right here, this perforated piece of cardboard. Instead of, you know, having a thin piece of paper covered in worm chow, we're going to have that thing. And I think it might be kind of a good thing too to have a big piece of cardboard in here placed in dry. Maybe it'll suck up some of the moisture in the system. And then we could just pull it out whole, you know. Don't have to find all kinds of little scraps of little bits of unbroken down bedding throughout the material by putting in a whole bunch of shredded paper, by putting in one piece of cardboard. I think one of my viewers actually made a suggestion like that, you know. Late in the game, use big chunks of cardboard, easy to pull out, you know, so that you can give them the bedding they need. Maybe even use it almost as a sponge to draw moisture to itself. And it's kind of a win-win from both of those points of view. So how's this going to go? I guess we'll level off here pretty much the way we left it last time. We just leveled everything off after tilling it up and aerating it. Then we placed in the paper and we placed in the worm chow. And then last time we covered up pretty thoroughly with the plastic. And I think this time that'll be the primary difference, is we'll probably leave the outer edge of this thing exposed to the air just so that some of the moisture in this system can begin to exit. I'm just wondering how big this piece of cardboard is in terms of coverage and leaving some space around it. It'll leave a little bit of space around it for a little bit of airflow, so you might see a little bit of drying in here. I wonder how much moisture the cardboard itself will absorb into itself. Alright. I was also thinking of some way of trying to give all this material a chance at being broken down too. Maybe actually put this down here as sort of an appetizer layer right below the primary feast of the cardboard on top. And put a little sprinkling of worm chow down into this stuff so they can kind of have a little snack before they go for the main course of the big chunk of cardboard out on the top that's going to have even more worm chow sprinkled onto it. How does that look? So here's the stuff we've been feeding them. We're just going to give all of this paper a nice coating of it. And I think by coating a piece of paper with this stuff, you're pretty much, you know, ensuring that it's going to get gobbled up by the worms. And then, I don't know. Just figured we'll just cover it up like so, right? And then the plastic, we'll put it in, but we'll pull it in from the edges so that it doesn't go out to the edges, allows for a little bit of ventilation. And then this thing, we're not going to draw a logo or anything onto it. I'll just pile this stuff in a kind of a sprinkly dusting across the top surface. I guess I'm running a little bit low here, so I got to be careful so I can spread it out across the entire surface. It's kind of what I envisioned, so that hopefully all of the cardboard will become sort of the side dish to go with the main course of the worm chow. It'd be kind of nice to see like nothing left of this in another, who knows, maybe 8 days. The system's 192 days of age at this point, so maybe 8 days would be a nice time to check in when it's reached 200 days of age. Does it make sense just to use up what's remaining? I don't know why. Might as well just sprinkle in what remains. It did seem kind of like a lot, you know. I looked at what was in here and I thought, do we give it all to them? And I think we pulled it off. I think it should work pretty good. Grit, though, I don't know. Do we add grit? You know, I guess we could, right? I got a whole bunch of it. I just restocked. In here too, we could just sprinkle it in here alongside the worm chow, along with the carbon. And I don't know. What do you think? Are they gonna like it? The plastic coverings will capture some of the moisture that would normally otherwise try to evaporate out of the system. It'll recirculate beneath the plastic. It'll create a nice humid zone right beneath the plastic, and I think it'll be a really tempting spot for the worms to come hang out at. So let's just be careful about covering it up, right? Let's not allow the plastic to go all the way out to the edges. We're just gonna cover the cardboard so that the cardboard becomes the center of the attention. The space where all the moisture in the bin recirculates and collects. Is that good enough? Yeah, not bad, right? It'll do. I just want to see some air around the edges. I'd like to see some evaporation, a little bit of drying of the material along the edges by the time we come back in here next. And it'd be kind of cool if the cardboard itself pulled a little bit of moisture into itself as well, and that if we can come back in here next time and find a lot more crumbly material, that's what I'd be looking for. That would be really nice. And then maybe we start migrating these worms soon. What do you think? I think it's about due time, right? All right, that's our 19th feeding for this 192-day-old African nightcrawler bin. Thanks for watching, everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. And also, if you haven't done so already, please consider subscribing to the channel too. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Bye now.